Dumb.
Cool.
And weird.
Podcast. The American dream. Is it dead or is it alive?
It never existed.
Never existed?
No. It was just some 1950s bullshit we came up with in Leave It to Beaver or Bieber, whatever the kid's name was.
Yeah, Bieber.
Douchebag kid. Definitely snitched on
Leave it to
people.
Bieber.
Yeah, leave it to Bieber. Well, it depends on what you mean.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna, me being me, I'm not gonna not bring some material analysis here.
Yeah, I got you. Well, I guess what I mean by the American dream is like, it makes me think of like the 1950s style, like American dream where everybody wants to have a family, white picket fence type stuff.
We can call that the post-war social contract for the American middle class.
Okay.
Because there is always a class dynamic when it comes to what we understand as the American dream. Mm-hmm. I mean, we can talk about it in very abstract terms. We can say life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, or we can say,
Can't do that if you can't afford gas anymore.
Exactly. But I mean, it generally, the United States cannot exist with an actual growing urban proletariat. It's just our political system and our economic system is allergic to it. And so, but we can't have a functioning republic if it's only run by the handful of super rich people.
Well, I blame
And
lawyers.
so,
Because they're
Life,
all
Liberty, and
lawyers.
Pursuit of happiness is a very lawyerly thing to say, where it's broad and specific at the same time.
Well, I was also going to say there's just a bunch of dudes who happen to be lawyers. It's love them or hate them, whatever you think. I do think it's funny when people say oh, well, you're not supposed to run your country like a business. I was isn't that kind of the point though? I mean, should I just let a bunch of lawyers ruin it instead of to let a businessman try and ruin it? Mm-hmm. Or help it? I don't know. I thought things were doing great when the businessman had it, but I also thought the business model was probably failing since the 70s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, lawyers and businessmen have the same sort of, imperative to create systems of plausible deniability around themselves. Yeah. It's just it just does it through. Where, businessmen do it through abstract labor and, building up people around them that do all the work to protect them from actual blame if something goes wrong, whereas lawyers do it through rhetorical chicanery.
Hey, I'm just going to argue to you why it's not my fault.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah, basically.
I'm telling you right now, it's everybody else's fault but mine.
Whereas the businessman, it's I'm paying other people so that it's not my fault.
And they fucked up, which reflects on me. It's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess for me as growing up, I always heard if you work really hard and you do all the right stuff, you'll get what you want out of life. And it seems like even with hard work, that's not enough. You know.
Wes, I've seen way too many penises to know that was never true.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you're talking about, again, the post-war social contract, where it's it wasn't anywhere close to socialism, but it was the closest that America got to socialism, and that we had
90% tax.
Well, that's not what would make
I was saying there was a 90% tax, but also we were the only nation that was able to bounce back right after the war.
Well, because we didn't have to completely rebuild our infrastructure from scratch. And then plus we were financing the rebuilding of entire nations overseas. But, it's what was I saying? Yeah, the post-war social contract thing. But that was the closest that we got to socialism in terms of there was a sizable working class. Mm-hmm. And the way that the United States has always dealt with a working class has been to bribe them and try to push enough of them into the middle class to maintain kind of petty bourgeois hegemony.
Gotcha.
And that was the way they did that in the post-war mid-century world, was to make people think of themselves as homeowners and consumers rather than workers or not workers.
Okay. That's very insightful.
I mean, everything was also affordable for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you
for
could.
for more than it is now.
Yeah. I was going to say 40 hours a week got you a lot in a single household, a single income household got you a lot more than two incomes in one household these days.
Yeah, I know the value of the dollar was different then, like in terms of like inflation and stuff like that. But after reading how much a house was and how much a car was back then, it seemed like even though the value was a little bit different than it is now, it still seems like your dollar went for a little bit more.
I'd also say
Yeah.
that the Cold War helped kind of destroy a lot of
It's like
a lot of those
back
possibilities.
then a house would cost like 15,000 and a car was like a couple $1,000s or something like that.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it was, there's a lot of theories about the value of dollars and stuff like that. Money, but generally, the Marxist view of it is that money is a commodity, which is basically also like a, classical economist perspective. Like Adam Smith viewed it that way, and Ricardo and all them. But it is a commodity that operates according to its own rules, and it is a thing that represents value. And the way we produce new dollars through economic expansion now is pretty different from the way that we were doing it in the
I mean, we just print
mid-century.
money now.
Yeah, they used to have something to back
Not
up the money.
quite. All right. Some modern monetary theory here, and from how I can understand it anyway, is that new dollars are generally created from the private sector, from the finance sectors, from the FIRE sectors, finance, insurance, and real estate, because they have to expand by extending credit, and this credit creates new dollars, and this new dollar creation has to be hedged by the creation of actual dollars, so that they have, they have actual money behind them, essentially, instead of just creating new dollars that can blow up in a credit bubble. And so the mint prints and destroys dollars at a specific rate, using interest rates and all that kind of stuff to hedge against new dollar creation from the private sector.
Interesting.
And so money in this case is a commodity representing credit and debt instruments, basically. So
I think we also further go into debt when we constantly go into war.
yeah, but we have enough in there that we end up making up for it in the end.
Well, I mean, the business, their war is itself a business. Somebody profits from it. What I'm saying is, though, is that consistently going to war is probably what's also destroying us, because we're always having to set up military installations everywhere around the world. It's
Yeah.
pretty expensive to also invade other countries.
Yeah, but war is kind of baked into the current model of global economic expansion when you think about it. Because not only are there billion-dollar industries or multi-billion-dollar industries in the business of war, it also maintains like places at the base and along the periphery of capital. So like it kind of just it doesn't establish order in places like, say, the Middle East, but it does keep it in enough disarray that we can still maintain the extraction of its resources. And so, like war as it is right now, like we're not going to see, I don't think, something like a World War II or World War I, where you had this mass collective mobilization of military and resources in the U.S.
I mean, for right now, I was going to say what's happening in Ukraine, though, could escalate. And because it has been escalating in the last month.
Maybe, but, and this is not just me, but like there are people who like are of the view, and I'm one of these, that Putin doesn't want control of Ukraine. He wants neutral buffer states between Russia and NATO. And so I don't see it escalating into World War III unless
I just think there is that heavy possibility, because it's just one of those things. If he doesn't get what he wants at the same time, though, while you're invading another country, you're going to also squeeze them into a position where they're going to want to join NATO.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is definitely going to be damaging to the Russian economy and the Russian state. Like, this is going to do some very serious damage. But
they're also unable. The most interesting thing that I also found out is that Soviet era equipment that they've been using is not as great when it comes to mobilizing a massive army.
No.
I mean, they're able to actually destroy to take those out with Molotov cocktails.
yeah, I mean, they're not able to like really do a serious.
They're not modernized
invasion.
like the U.S. weaponry and even
Well, I
Chinese
mean, like,
weaponry.
yeah, but it's just like they're still one of, you know, the U.S. still like outspends or has a military larger than the next military down, which would be China. It's still like 20 times the size of China's military or whatever. But like, you know, like removing the U.S., Russia is still like a very big military power.
Well, they also have I mean, during their time as the USSR, they did actually build up enough arms to supply them for the next.
Yeah, it
who
got
knows
to
how long.
like where Soviet state-run industry was basically just a giant military-industrial complex.
Yeah.
But the same thing with the U.S., but it was just a different model. It was through like private contractors as opposed to like a single state-run operation.
And I think the next thing about it though too that I find is interesting is that when it comes to the United States, I feel like we're spending where other countries should be spending on their military, so we don't always have to constantly
Well, that's the
pick
deal.
up the defense fund.
That's the deal, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like they like the other NATO countries, like we are the military
backup.
hegemon. We are basically their military, and they back us. But like they're also our biggest customers, and also we are some of their biggest customers. Like our economies are very tightly intertwined.
Oh yeah, I mean we talked about this the last time. That's just the effects of globalization itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Our money's their money, and vice versa.
Yeah, precisely. But back to the American dream.
Yeah, do you think with the American dream, do you think they might develop a new American dream?
In terms of like a new social contract, we're going to have to.
Yeah, and what do you think that might look like?
Anything better than what we have now? I mean, people developed a new social contract after the Depression, which led us to the 1950s. So we might see something like that again, where people
that took real struggle.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
I think we're reaching that point.
Well, I
though.
mean, like the American labor movement was much more violent than the European one, and it lasted from like the 1870s. Like the real nadir of the American labor movement was like from the 1870s till like 1940, and the 1930s were incredibly violent. And it just basically what happened was that labor forced itself to the bargaining table for the New Deal, so that the New Deal had to do some concessions to labor. It had no choice.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're surviving on nothing, you'll do anything to get put into a better place. So, I think once people are unable to even pay their bills off of OnlyFans, and that's not like taking a shot at the people who do that. I mean, that's a smart way to do it. If you can do it, you have to do what works for you. But the saddest part is that you're doing OnlyFans because your real job doesn't pay.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone's expected to have a job, a side hustle, and a business all at the same time.
I have a job, a side hustle, and a business, and I'm still in debt.
Exactly. and so like the kind of neoliberal social contract of like the post Reagan era, where it's kind of been like you are on your own, essentially.
I'm so glad that Ronald Reagan,
Is dead.
Well, yeah. Well, I was going to say that's the greatest part about it, but I'm so glad that his legacy ended up with gun control, arming the Middle East, and destabilizing everywhere that we could have had allies today.
Yeah. He was somehow. It was interesting because Reagan was a Republican, but he was really pro gun control. Which was interesting.
He was
as governor of California. Yes, he passed one of the country's first major gun control.
Because the Black Panther Party was was not doing it, was actually doing everything legally.
Yeah, they're doing community defense, and like Huey P. Newton was like a constitutional scholar and shit. Like
I
he
wasn't
knew
even going to
shit.
talk about that. I was just going to talk about the fact that they were allowed
Yeah.
to actually hold on, have their rifles and open carry.
And they brought their guns into the state house, and then
everyone was like, "Yep, we gotta do something about this."
yeah, we gotta change that. And they're showing up armed to police stops and stuff like that. And so like that was entirely too frightening a prospect for Reagan and the California Republicans.
And then he tried to persuade Congress in the 80s to put in a quote unquote the greatest what a lot of these other politicians do, an assault weapons ban. And it's amazing. He's still kind of like the Jesus to the Republican Party for a lot of the old Republicans.
Yeah,
I don't like him.
My parents loved Reagan. I grew up in a very like pro-Reagan household.
I used to like Reagan, but then I just realized, wait, Reagan stands for nothing I believe in.
Yeah.
He's actually like the opposite of what I want.
Yeah, and like we process the past through its media in a lot of ways, and the media of the 1980s was an alternate reality from
The 1980s.
the actual 1980s. Because like the actual 1980s was like communities being gutted, jobs getting shipped overseas, like just crushing poverty, the crack epidemic, like all sorts of problems. And then like on TV it was like the equivalent of 1980s, like Leave It to Beaver. It was just this kind of
Alf.
yeah.
I was going to say the American dream can be translated very well into professional wrestling.
Yeah.
Which it was.
As much as like, so I have like like how my mom kind of views the 1950s is kind of how I view the 1980s, like in this like really weird rose tinted glasses.
Oh yeah, very much.
So when I watch like those shows, sitcoms and stuff from the 1980s, like I think it's kind of fun to watch, but at the same time, I realize this is a very exaggerated.
This is make believe. This is not reality.
You know what was great though? The 90s wrestling. The attitude era of wrestling was like the perfect embodiment of the 1990s. This place sucks. Everything sucks. Let's beat up and kill the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I was watching. Y'all ever seen Family Ties? Like an episode of it?
I don't think I've ever actually watched an episode.
So-
but I know what show you're talking about.
In Family Ties, it's very interesting because it's kind of like how like the parents are very liberal and very hippie.
Oh, it's the one with
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox, where he's like the Reaganite youth.
Yeah, and so he's one of the youth that's very conservative because
Yeah.
that was really popular in the 80s to be very conservative. But it's not just him.
Well, like we use. I don't really like the terms liberal and conservative, but yeah, just kind of like.
Well, I guess I mean like traditional
Yeah,
conservative.
he was very. Affectively, yes, very conservative.
Yeah,
suit and tie, preppy.
I watched the show, and he was he liked Richard Nixon a good bit.
Yeah.
And he was very much into Reagan. And his, like, I don't know, there was an episode where he said he loved Richard Nixon a lot, and Michael Gross, however you want to say his name, was his dad, walks into the next room and goes, "He was a crook." He's like screaming it.
Yeah,
It was just funny.
yeah.
I mean, it's kind of like I guess that's kind of like how it works with my family. Parents voted Biden, and my brothers and I voted Trump. But it's like it's just kind of weird because they're always like, yeah, the only reason we voted for him is to get Trump out of office. Like, then why did you even bother? It's like that would be like me saying I voted to keep Trump in office.
Yeah, I didn't vote for either one. I just couldn't do it. I voted for the Democrats on the state Senate just because I wanted to fuck with the Georgia state patronage. Just because it's just like, the Republicans have a stranglehold on the patronage, and I just wanted to fuck with it.
Well, it's crazy because of it's only since the 90s that you actually have since the 90s was when the Georgia became like Republican, really. Like the South had a stranglehold with the Democrats for the longest period of time. I mean,
that's a whole story unto itself as to why that was.
Well, usually when you kill the opposition or scare them into just being like, yeah, we're not going to the fucking South ever. it kind of helps keep your party.
It's just the parties in the United States aren't ideologies. They're not.
They're football teams.
Kind of. They're basically just like private clubs that oversee patronage networks, and they jostle over territory. That's what they do. And like, and when you look at the Democratic Party these days is basically just a consultation firm, and it's like a fucking factory for producing more like DC lanyard nerds, and just to be like wonks and technocrats and work for not for profits. And then the Republican Party is like a bit more. I mean, they're both entrepreneurial in terms of like how they like recruit people, but the way it's like entrepreneurial in the Republican Party is almost to like manufacture like what appear to be grassroots like movements. Like that seems to be the new thing now for the Republican Party.
So is it kind of like Trader Jose's? It's a nice ripoff of Corona, slightly more bite to it. Definitely needs a lime.
So is that the beer of the day?
That is the beer of the day, but we'll also have to get into the Scotch of the day later.
This is bourbon, son.
Well, whatever it is, I'm telling you right now, this is definitely slightly harder piss water from Mexico.
Nice.
That came from Trader Joe's.
Fair enough.
Well, Will is drinking Yellow Rose Outlaw bourbon whiskey. This is the stuff that the outlaws drink.
You said it's great with steak.
It's very good with steak. It's got it's heavy, but it's also got very smoky thing. Like instead of having like a normal whiskey burn, like it's very smoky and very nice. Damn good with steak.
Yeah, you know what they say that burn is, right in the back of your throat? It's cancer.
They always said that.
I thought you were gonna say it was like like a dick or something.
No.
No.
Dicks do give you
or
cancer.
Is that the kind of joke that he would come up with?
Well, let me tell you something.
Dick jokes are always there.
Dicks are okay. I just don't want that burning to turn into cancer.
Right.
Well, usually it turns into AIDS.
Well, it can turn into AIDS. Maybe.
It can.
If a person has AIDS.
Or just the common cold.
Yeah, the common cold.
Hey, if they ate a bunch of beef jerky and they came in the back of your throat, it's probably gonna burn.
Yeah. Especially the peppered kind. Anyway.
Hey, survive off of beef jerky and whiskey.
I mean, that's the American dream.
That is the American dream at this point. I mean, once they start taxing us more on our whiskeys and our beers is when we're starting to kill people.
It's funny. We were talking about a documentary. It's called How Beer Saved the World. It's a really fun documentary to watch. But basically in that documentary, they were talking about how...
you couldn't drink the water, so people made beer.
Yeah, it was a lot of different things. It's basically what started civilization. Like people started like doing agriculture for beer. They started doing...
It was some of the first mass production in human history.
Yep. But it also talked about how it kind of created like the United States. The United States started using beer to like kind of like become like as big as it was, and you could even say beer is probably the American dream for
beer is the American dream
for.
Well, I mean, the one genuinely American form of alcohol is not even really that popular these days. It's apple brandy.
Sounds interesting.
Applejack is like the only. It's like the only like. Truly developed.
Is that what Johnny
States.
Appleseed created?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was a lush.
Yeah. Did you know he was a real person?
Yeah, he is.
I didn't know he was a real person.
I don't know his story, but yeah.
He was just
based on somebody.
He was some kind of like really
guy.
Intellectual guy who lived over in Massachusetts or something, and he basically decided one day that he wanted to become a farmer. And he went and tried to be a farmer.
Trees.
Well, he wasn't really successful at it or something like that. And then he just basically traveled the United States and started planting apple trees everywhere. And that's why the United States has tons of apple trees everywhere, apparently.
Right. Take your word for it.
Yeah.
To be fair, he's in kids' books, and kids' books usually, for some reason, tell me more truth than the CNN.
No, well, see, the thing about him is they have a lot of tall tales about him. They said that his feet were so tough that a snake couldn't bite through them.
Okay, see, I missed that rendition of the story. What
He
was
wore a
that?
frying pan on his head or whatever.
Yeah,
I saw that one too. I thought it was he was just a very odd fellow. Mostly would be homeless today.
Yeah, I'd say the modern equivalent of him is probably Vermin Supreme.
So maybe it's where Vermin Supreme's family line comes from.
Yeah,
And they realized
maybe he's a distant relative of
Yeah,
Johnny
possibly.
Appleseed.
maybe he realized after he went mad from wearing all those mercury-laced hats that his American dream was to plant apple trees everywhere.
Could you imagine if Vermin Supreme ever actually got elected as president? That'd be.
I would
wonder-
go for it.
I'm here for it.
I mean, at this point, I want professional wrestlers to start trying to be presidents.
Yeah, didn't you? What's his name? What's the name of that wrestler that
Kane.
became a governor? What was his name?
Oh, you're talking about Jesse
Jesse
Ventura.
the Body Ventura.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesse
it was-
Ventura went a lot of
he was
places.
a governor, right?
Yep.
Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yeah, he was like an independent like governor, right?
He was the only independent, like the only libertarian to become a governor.
Libertarian, not quite. He definitely was cool with using government expenditures to actually do public works
person I think
projects.
about that's,
he had Minnesota
think-
build a high speed rail.
I think you're thinking of. I think
Smart, though.
you're thinking of Ron Paul. I think.
Yeah, Ron Paul. Well, and then you have his discount son, Rand.
Yeah,
He's a real disappointment to his dad.
yeah.
I mean,
Or
I know,
at least I think.
well,
And everyone.
I know Ron. I know Ron is a libertarian. I don't know if his son is a libertarian though.
Rand would probably say he is not.
He's a diet libertarian. He's more like neocon.
He's I wouldn't call him a neocon, but he is like maybe a paleo conservative. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. He's just kind of
He's there.
He's a tool of the Republican Party, and particularly it's kind of like
He doesn't
idiot
go
wing.
anywhere.
Yeah,
He's like Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders is the biggest like letdown of the Democrats.
yeah.
He had no job until he was 40, and his first job was being in government.
That's
he
not
survived.
quite true.
I mean, he had some odd jobs.
That's
but
not quite
very
true.
good.
That's not quite true. I like Bernie.
I don't. He reminds me of everything that's wrong by being the guy who's like I'm against the system. Let me be part of the system now.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's just kind of the inevitable.
Tell you what, the Democratic Party definitely hates him. They've thrown him under the bus many times.
No, they didn't just throw him under the bus. They reversed the bus.
Yeah, though now he is part of the Democratic Party leadership, even though he's technically an independent. Mm-hmm. And so he does have some pull now, but it's still just kind of like it's like the what's really frustrating about the like social democratic left right now in the United States is that it seems its only like strategy is to just elect more like Bernie-crats. Mm-hmm. You know,
Just shit out whatever they can.
and it's just that's not really a way to actually like build real political power here. That's just kind of a way to like try to beg for scraps at the table of power.
Well, to be fair, I mean, most conservatives are losers. And they kind of like to stand on that moral high ground of like, well, we lost, but at least we didn't do what they did.
Well, I mean, that's what liberals say too. I mean, that's kind of like the idea of small r Republican virtue is just a regular old football that gets kicked back and forth. Both parties say that shit.
I don't know. It felt like the Democrats really came to like win.
No.
And then the Republicans are like, well,
No.
we don't know what to do anymore.
No. Like the Republicans just lost control of their constituency. And the Democrats are basically the Washington Generals of American politics. They beg for a functional Republican Party so that they don't actually have to do anything. And they've been like they ran on all of these promises, didn't do a goddamn single one of them because they didn't want to do any of them. It was because
true.
like people in their constituency were like, hey, we're all working class people and we lose our health insurance at least once a year. How about all of us be on the same health insurance plan? Which is still not socialism, but it's like, it's like that's a minimum program as far as I'm concerned. But like, that's the best that we could come up with, and it was the most radical thing in the Overton window of American politics, and the Democrats didn't even want to do that.
I do think it was speaking about politics. I was watching Futurama today, and it was talking about Nixon was talking about. It was like computers might be faster than when I was around, but the American voter is still dumb. And I'm just like, yeah, he's really right.
I wouldn't say that the American voter is dumb. I just say that there's no options, and we're all like doing this.
I know during the election period, I know when I saw who the Democrats picked for their candidates, I remember specifically looking at Biden and Kamala Harris and being like, those are the two motherfuckers I would vote
Nobody
for.
wanted.
I would totally wouldn't vote for them the least. Those are at the bottom of the list. And
And that's why I'm calling
who the
election
fuck did they
fraud.
pick? They picked those two. And I was like, what?
Yeah, they did a fucking pincer maneuver on Bernie, so that like they could like make sure that Bernie did not get it, and that Biden would be the guy.
I would say though they had candidates who actually could have had people like go behind them and everything, but they did pick like the worst humans
Yeah.
possible.
No, I mean they had some okay candidates. I thought. I mean, I like Andrew Yang a good bit.
I
think
like
he's-
Tulsi
I
Gabbard.
don't like Andrew Yang.
You don't like
Of
him?
course you like Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah,
Ugh.
she's normal.
She's a fucking freak. She's a weirdo, man.
Oh yeah. Like what kind of freak are we talking about?
Yeah, are we talking like
Not the good kind. Not the fun kind. I'm
No,
sorry.
she seems
She's a
fun.
fucking weirdo.
She's fun. I like what she stands for. It's good.
But you didn't like Andrew Yang either.
No.
No, wasn't a big fan.
No, I don't like libertarian, like, technocrat, like, bullshit.
So that's why you don't like Tulsi Gabbard.
That too. Yeah. But, well, she's throwing her hat in on the culture war bullshit. That's just, like, to me, that's just kind of like, I'm done with you.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of starting to all make sense because the only way to really get the voters is to grab them by the balls with the culture.
So what do you think? What do you think the next election is going to be like?
Professional wrestlers.
I don't even want to fucking think about it.
Professional wrestlers.
No,
I
I'm
swear
telling
to
you
God,
right now.
if we have Trump versus Biden again in 2024, I
No.
don't know what I'm gonna do. Like
just-
seriously, like I don't know what I'm gonna do. I can tell you that like I'm pretty sure that the Democrats are gonna get absolutely mopped for the
Again.
midterms.
Yeah.
They're going to lose either the House, definitely the Senate
So
And do you think they'll lose the presidency too?
in 2024.
Yeah.
Depends on who the Republicans run. It's very rare for. Well, I mean, I don't know.
it's been very rare recently, though, to have someone like. I mean, Trump's kind of the anomaly. Like the last actually, I think last three presidencies with Clinton and everything they've served both their terms. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it could happen again.
It shows how bad it has to get before like a president will lose power.
But see, that's my point. Is what my American dream is to have professional wrestlers become our presidents, because it doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't have to actually happen. But you know what the problem is? A professional wrestler can keep its promise.
But that's our problem, man. Like all of our politics is professional wrestling. It's all kayfabe.
But
That's all it is.
But sadly, we
But I
just
guess-
don't
but I
get a
gu-
chair.
But I guess what Nick is saying is if it's already going to be like professional wrestling, can we get some real professional wrestlers?
Yeah, can we like get the? Like,
I mean, sure, why not? Let's go ahead and just like crank the spectacle to 11 so that we can actually develop a real democratic project and overthrow this shit
I think we have to have like a Royal
and
Rumble,
establish socialism.
a Royal Rumble to determine who gets the house. Then you have a tag team to see who gets the presidency.
Is Vince McMahon going to like moderate this? Or
Yes, absolutely, he has to.
Oh, that would be terrible. He's
No, he's got to come out as the boss, like he always does.
I'm just
Vince McMahon
tired
was-
of fucking rich people like ruling everything. Like I'm just tired of it.
Well, that's why we got to get professional wrestlers to do it. They are broke as shit.
Yeah, they're broke as shit, but still they're like doing a show. But you know, it's like
You know, when you work for a traveling circus, you're making whatever the man at the top tells you are.
yeah, I know.
Except it's a traveling circus I love. Like, I mean, let's get.
But it's just like I feel like professional wrestlers would be easily bought.
I mean, everyone else already is, so I would already
Yeah, no,
enjoy
but
it.
they're all so. Why turn that? Why like escalate this?
I just like chaos.
This is bullshit. Why escalate the bullshit?
Because eventually what will happen is everything will fall apart and we could just start claiming whatever we want. You know, you could take whatever part of Georgia you want. I could take the stadium and we could do a Thunderdome thing there.
You trying to make it like Mad Max?
Yes.
Oh my God.
You sound very black pilled.
I don't even know what these words mean because the red pill people scare me. Because they all just seem to hate women.
It's true. No, black pilled, like, just a nihilist about it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's definitely
See, if you just use nihilist, I would have been okay. But it's like when you start putting pills in front of things, I start thinking about like those guys who believe in the Matrix, and they start telling.
Completely misinterpreted the Matrix.
Yeah, they also keep telling me about how I have to.
Don't they call them incels too?
Yeah, they call incels are different because now everyone's an incel. We're an incel technically.
Well,
if we
really,
say
what their
something
problem
wrong.
is, they just need to get
I have a
laid.
baby coming in August. I am not an incel.
No. You're an incel with extra steps. That's the problem. They'll find a way.
What?
They'll find a way. They found a way to make things worse. They'll do it again.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, man. These incels, man, they're a very interesting group of folks. I've met a few guys that are like that.
They masturbate way too much.
Or too little.
Or they don't masturbate to the right things, maybe?
That's what I'm talking about. It's
No.
like they either masturbate too much or not enough.
If anybody needs the American dream, they do.
Well, first off, we got to repossess their house and make them homeless so they can learn some lessons. Then we build them up slowly from homelessness.
I think that incels are a symptom of just our just desocialization in general and like with neoliberalism, that has been the trajectory. It has been desocialization of like production and life.
Well, it's interesting. I
Like we're only like a couple steps away from just all of us just like working on laptops and pods. And that's like how we interact with production and with each other.
Is a prison.
Yes.
I do know from my perspective, dating, it has been very interesting the past like 3 years. I would say dating now is very different than it was like 10 years ago when I dated. I tend to run into two different types of women. I tend to run into some really cool women who are very open-minded and will, are very easy to work with. But then I also run into women who are very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very hard to deal with sometimes. They get very angry easily. I know I dated this one girl who told me that because I'm a white guy, I'm the blame of all her problems in the world.
And you're just kind of looking at her like, wait, aren't you white?
Yeah, she was white.
Exactly.
But it was just really interesting hearing her just kind of rip into me, and I don't know, she was just very angry, and I told her, I was like, I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm just living my life, man.
It was like that situation where we were at the bar and those two women were telling us how much the United States sucked, yet one of them was from Iran and the other one was from Argentina.
What's that got to do with anything?
No, they were trying to live here. I mean, Iran's not that great when it comes to being a woman.
No.
I mean, Argentina, I don't know, but I know Iran's not that great for being.
Well,
a woman.
like we've done bad things to Argentina, and we've also done bad things to Iran.
I mean, a lot of people have done bad things to Argentina. The Nazis did bad things by just staying there.
Some are still there.
No, they never left. They probably still run the government.
Well, they had a military dictatorship backed by us for a while.
And then that military dictatorship went to the Falklands, which then the Falklands happened, and, well, you all know that.
What he was trying to say was they said they hated the United States, but they also told us they wanted to live here. So it was a very, weird, I don't know, it was really bizarre.
Well, it's either live here or be subject to American foreign policy.
But at the same time,
And if you're in Iran or Argentina, you're definitely subject to American foreign policy. So at least if you live here, you're not subject to American foreign policy.
it was an odd situation. It's just kind of like when I do find it interesting when people hate the country they're moving to. And it's like, oh yeah, I really don't want to live there. It's like, then don't fucking live there.
Well, I mean,
if I wanted to leave, I would just go somewhere else.
Not everywhere is the same though. It's like, again, you're.
I mean, if you
it's like okay, so.
I'm just saying,
if someone grew up in the backwoods of Appalachia in a rundown trailer that where only half of it was still standing and the bathroom was the woods, and then they came to try to live in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia, and fucking hate it. was just like, well, my option is to like still live in a fucking trailer. Like it sucks, but like, you know, this is at least better than that. I don't know. Like I don't know. Those people are not here, so I can't talk to them about these things.
I mean,
like I'm being like overly presumptuous here and talking myself into a hole.
It was just an odd conversation, really. I mean, I kind of think about like how I have friends from like really. I'm just gonna say is like a lot of my friends from really harsh places in Mexico, and I'm just thinking about like how they just love it here because it's not Mexico, and when they hear people constantly like bitch about the United States, they're just like, why do you hate this place so much? And looking at it from their perspective, it's like people who it's like I've only noticed like all the people who I've ever met liked Castro and communist Cuba aren't any of my friends from Cuba.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we wouldn't let any of the Cuban communists in, even if they wanted to.
Well, no, I was just gonna say is like
we handpicked people from Cuba to come here.
Did we though?
Yes, we did.
I mean,
Very
a lot
much.
of them come over here too, and just like they seem to like it better.
I mean, we have been committing like just
I mean,
economic warfare against them for the past 70 years.
I mean, we have. Let's just
And I mean,
open
it's just
that
like
up.
it's like a matter of it becomes a matter of survival, where it's just kind of like, well, I could
I
go
guess
work
it's 'cause-
as a cook in a kitchen in Miami and make more money and like send it home.
I look at it this way though, is like all those people were affected by that revolution personally. So it's like I completely understand why they don't like it.
Yeah, because a lot of them were fighting for Batista and
Yeah,
committing war crimes and shit.
I mean,
There's a lot of those.
Both sides committed war crimes, but then again, if you ever really look at a nice war, everyone's committing war crimes.
Batista's side committed more, and they also like had like several decades of brutal military dictatorship before the revolution broke out.
But I mean, it's like a trend though. It followed through.
What are you talking about?
Like the people who were killed by the Castro regime.
What are you talking about?
People who were executed by the Castro regime. Or
Yeah,
imprisoned.
the war criminals that were killed in basically their version of
I don't know. I mean,
their version of the fucking what was the of the trials after World War II. I mean, it's like
we're gonna just have to agree to disagree on that one. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, you have to like. I just talked to other people. I mean, you've got your sources. I've got mine. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
I'm only listening to the people that I've talked to.
Yeah, and I've heard those voices, and then I've like looked into the actual history of it, you know, and it's just. I'm sorry. I just don't. I want evidence more than I want anecdotal evidence. You know.
At the same time, though, I think they came here and they found the American dream, which works for them. I mean, they found what they were looking for.
They had to leave Cuba because a lot
Yeah.
of them were war criminals, and were like not in a good position, or like you know, like the whole thing in the like the 80s where like there was
they sent everybody over though. They also sent criminals.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Like what is it? When people watch Scarface, it's like they don't realize, like, oh yeah, they legitimately sent over like guys who were fucking insane over here, and I mean it worked.
And it was in reaction to a policy from the United States. I can't remember what exactly it was. I'd have to look at the information. I haven't looked at it in a while, but it was like
I think that whole them boating people over here lasted for quite a while though.
no, it was a period of a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean that's still quite a
The
while.
flotilla thing, yeah. Yeah, I'd have to look at all that shit, and that's a topic for another day.
I mean, honestly, it's just it's still crazy how many people came over in a couple of years though.
Yeah,
But then again, it's also how many people were sent
because
over
like
here who
also
were in prison.
in the 80s, like the Cuba's economy collapsed because their one trading partner was
Collapsing.
having issues. Yes,
Well, I mean, that's what a war with Afghanistan will do too.
yeah.
You know, we can learn a lot from fighting in Afghanistan from other people.
We should probably avoid places that call themselves the graveyard of empires.
You know, it would be smart, but the greatest thing about history is no one learns anything from history.
That's true.
They just read it and they're like, I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I
That's
can do
like
that better.
it's like Napoleon. Don't attack Russia in the winter.
Yeah.
Hitler, bet I got
can do
this. Let's see who's next.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, it
exactly.
didn't work out too well.
No, it's never going to work out well.
No.
I mean, that's why in every even fictional book, like we were talking about the Man in High Castle, Russia just still happens to be continuously conducting guerrilla warfare further into this Siberia. Is basically where it was in Siberia. Like just keep like pulling the troops in, which is just a massive frozen graveyard for anybody.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, yeah. That's a general thing with the Slavs. They will go guerrilla warfare on you.
They'll go balls deep.
Yeah, just generally speaking, with Eastern Europe and Russia. Chinese too, and
Their
the
guns are-
Vietnamese did that to us.
Well, the Vietnamese did a great job defeating the Chinese too.
Yep, the Chinese invaded right after.
A month. It took them a month to get kicked out.
Yeah, they got, and that was that, and like the war with Vietnam from China was like when China was like, we're not going to do that anymore. Like we're not going to do military invasions or do military adventurism anymore. Like that's a bad idea.
Well, it's amazing because they got like the first part, like that first half of the month, they're just like, it's working out quite well. And then they went all Vietnam on them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And it turned out, the Viet Cong are really tough. And then once you give them better military backing it just became Vietnam afterwards, no longer the NVA.
Yeah,
When they started actually fighting back, they realized, oh, this is a bad idea. It's like when we realized we shouldn't pacify Japan.
yeah. American dream.
Yeah, that's the American dream right there.
Yeah, militarize the shit out of Japan right after taking everything away from them.
But yeah, like to going back a good ways. What we think like a future American dream might look like, but like for me, it's like what the next social contract would look like. It seems a lot like, like in the 18th Brumaire, Marx said that history repeats itself. First time is tragedy, the second time is farce. And that when a new political movement develops and out of the shadow of an old one, it can't help but try to ape the original one. And like that's pretty much what I see happening right now, and it's very disheartening because like when I look at what we call a left in this country, like it's just New Deal nostalgia for the most part, but just saying like we should do the New Deal again, but we can do the New Deal better by being more universal. And we don't have this, theoretically, we don't have this racist contingency of Southern segregationists to contend with when it comes to developing the program. But then that just leaves this, what we call a left, the left that is like nostalgic for the New Deal. Like it's basically just isolated to urban areas and the suburbs around it. And even then, mostly just in the urban areas. And so, but the suburbs is where the real battleground is in terms of politics right now. And it's a mixture of New Deal nostalgia. It's also a mixture of like xenophobic, Americanist, like, traditionalist sort of nostalgia as well. And so, yeah, like it could go in any direction.
I'm just wondering when we're gonna get to the point to where the government decides to freeze our bank accounts because they don't like what we do.
I don't think we're.
I mean,
don't think we're gonna
Canada.
get
The
there.
reason why I say that is because Canada went right out of left field with that one. They're like, we don't like you guys protesting. Freeze their bank accounts.
Yeah, but it's just I don't see that happening on a mass level. I see that happening potentially to people that we all agree, or that the majority of Americans agree, like, fucking deserves it.
Yeah, but then that's a slippery.
Because I mean, like, then it's just, yeah,
It's a slippery
I
slope,
understand slippery slope arguments, and I don't generally like them because it's not it's like taking something that's happening now and just assuming a particular train of events when like we have to actually look at the material reality of it.
Well, the reason I'm that is something that's concerning is because eventually, it's like when it comes to how we fought the war on terror, we just opened up
Yeah,
for
we developed
everything.
a security state.
We developed a security state, and now these people are spying on us instead of spying on what we would consider our supposed enemies around the world. So that was our slippery slope event then. So it's a curious thing to see.
But like the freezing of assets thing, that's just one aspect of the current security state, the digitized security state. So it's not necessarily something that is just like, I think it's like a tool in their toolbox that they might test, and then
I guess it's scary because it happened. It didn't just happen with the people who were protesting over there. It would also happen to the people who donated to them, and then their bank accounts were seized as a form of evidence that they can use against them if they saw fit later on.
Yeah, of course.
That's a scary thing. Is that okay? Like, let's just say you happen to agree with a movement at that moment, donate to them, and then you're like, oh, I really wish I didn't do that. Now your assets are frozen. That's
right,
what's
but this
concerning.
is like I feel like this is just waving a sword at one Hydra head, when the actual beast is like a security state that not only grew out of the war on terror, but also has like market implications and like a market purpose and a purpose for the accumulation of capital. Like all of our cell phones and our devices, our cameras, everything that we post online, it is an information economy, and the way that you have information that you can commodify is to extract it, which it goes hand in hand with a security state. They're part of the same thing.
So speaking of the security state, though, do you think that they're also kind of tampering with our dream in terms of the American dream? Because we are a little bit, because all of our information's out there. Do you think it's becoming a little bit troubling with the fact that you can?
It depends on how you're defining the American dream. Like if you're defining the American dream in terms of like what I suggested earlier, in terms of a constructed social contract to buy off enough of the American middle class electorate to protect the state from like actual like proletarian backlash.
Do you think
like I don't really see the security state or the information economy going anywhere.
Do you think it could change though? Like people are probably going to want to have that all rolled back.
With
a change.
There are people that want privacy, like out of the information economy, and they want surveillance capitalism contained in some ways. But I think those are mostly fucking nerds and wonks. I don't really, because I mean, like to the extent that there is a popular backlash against it, it is all over the fucking place.
Yeah, I mean, once you post something, it's out there.
Yeah, you have like fucking like people going off into conspiratorial places. You have people like blaming the Jews. You have people fucking blaming this nebulous thing of globalists and lizard people and all that other kind of shit.
I think by
instead of
people,
like actually like, and then you have a small contingent of lefty nerds that are like, no, it's all surveillance capitalism. It's all part of the same thing. But like when it comes to like what people will have access to in terms of like, hey, this is a program being offered to you that can help roll back some of this. It's basically just going to be some like minimal privacy protections and consumer stuff from the context of us as consumers.
Yeah. And
so like I just see that as part of our reality for our mode of production, but I don't really see that as central to like a new social contract. A new social contract to me will be one where we do something to address affordable housing, to push wages up, to lessen the credit crunch, to make it easier for people to like, or maybe even Medicare for all ends up being part of the new social contract. I don't know. But like I feel like it's like it can go either way, but the social contract and the American dream is always comes down to a material one. In the 19th century, it was land, it was the yeoman dream that still relied on an urban proletariat and a manufacturing base. In the 20th century, it was, not homesteaders and the yeoman dream. It was like homeowners in the suburban dream and both still relied on like a manufacturing class that had to be like kind of kept in check. And so, like I just see that happening again, but just in a slightly varied way and probably more digitized.
4-minute warning.
Yeah.
We're at the 4-minute warning.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's terrible.
So I don't
I think
know.
honestly, there's going to be a push for. If anything's going to be a push for first, it's going to be on the lines of healthcare, education, and housing. Mm-hmm. Because
Yeah,
I mean,
and
those have been the biggest things that we hear in every election.
Yeah, and then plus it's like our alternative here, the one that's being put forward by the ruling class, is like, hey, let's privatize schools more and like do more school choice, and like use public money to fund private charter schools where, oh, by the way, the teaching staff is not unionized, so they don't get paid dick.
I mean, they don't even get paid dick when they're unionized.
That's true. But they do have more protections.
And
that also depends on the state.
Yeah, I was
like
gonna say
the
certain states are
NEA
better.
in like South Carolina. Both my parents were members of the NEA, but like it was like they didn't really do much to actually like address salary concerns and things like that. But they at least protected them from administration. But like the Chicago Teachers Union is like, still one of the most powerful unions in the country.
I think it's crazy though that you don't get paid dick to basically. You're basically trying to form the next youth of America, and you're told, yeah, here's $30-something thousand a year.
Well, the school privatization people, they want to create like a thing where we're basically teaching our kids through apps. Like that's what they want to do.
I think it's kind of, and speaking of which, I think that's kind of why we see a lot of people.
It's fresh ground for capital accumulation.
Well, it seems that that's kind of why we're also seeing like people who are growing up socially awkward.
Yes.
Is because most people are learning through apps.
Yeah, school is supposed to be a socialization process. So is work, honestly.
Yeah.
And it's good that we like have this socialization process. And like and suburbanization is bad for the socialization process because like you grow up in this isolated little corner of like some community that's also isolated from the rest of the world. And so yeah, it's a continuation of that kind of thing where we are trying to like de-socialize people and create a bunch of Robinson Crusoes when we're a social species, and we should lean into that because we're better that way.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's like it's weird. It's just strange because you do see a lot, like, I guess being that we're all older and seeing people who are not that much younger than us cannot communicate in society. It's very strange for us.
Yeah.
I mean, and we're not talking about like, I found it interesting. Some people that you meet even in the military is like when you see people who are not able to even like socialize that much, getting into that. I mean, in the military, you should be social. You should be a social creature because you're in confined spaces or you're in an environment that it's a good idea to be a social person.
Yeah.
And you're seeing people who would rather spend time in their rooms versus going
Polishing their rifles menacingly.
No, you can't do that. That's great. That's great. Like Hollywood.
Yeah.
They stay nice in the armory.
Yeah.
I was gonna when we go to the armory, we then make suicide jokes with our weapons.
Right, of course.
We got a minute. We got a minute left.
But yeah, like
I was gonna say it was like socialization.
But we're at this point, and this is like what makes me kind of pessimistic. Even though generally speaking, I'm not pessimistic, but like I'm pessimistic about this because like everything in our culture points to this idea of the socialization process being utter trauma. Defined as trauma and being traumatic. as opposed to like being this thing where you like learn how to exist in a world and like cooperate and work with other people.
So
And we would, and it feels like we are actively trying to throw away the socialized like mode of production, the socialized mode of being, the socialized culture, to like just basically create ourselves into little homesteaders that hide in pods and, you know, are afraid of everything.
I think it's going to bounce back, though.
Oh, absolutely.
It's
That's what I'm saying.
we've
Because
reached
you
that
can't
point.
function that way. And like even that existence still requires, again, a like undercurrent of a socialized mode of production that is able to manufacture things in great amounts. And we have a tendency to push that onto other countries.
I think, honestly, it's going to happen with this, with the midterms coming up. Like, I think past this point, I think, honestly, past this administration, whatever happens after this next 2 years, we're going to start seeing more change.
Yeah, I think so
I don't
too.
even think it's going to matter if the administration itself changes. I think that
Yeah.
people are going to change and they're going to demand more.
Yeah, but then on top of that, we have to like figure out how to actually organize and develop a real politics to push for real change and agree on what that change needs to be.
I think it's just right now as we're starting to see that people are going to start putting those seeds in there. You know,
Yeah.
they're gonna start mobilizing bit by bit.
Yeah, and I hope so.
Because I mean,
But like we do have to like get over this like fear of each other and our fear. We have to get over our like antisocial tendencies.
I think the whole all the COVID lockdowns even made that worse.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
it brought us further away from each other. It kept us in our own little bubble.
But I think that it did
got
teach
worse.
us, most of us, that we need each other.
Yeah.
Because like it was miserable. It was miserable being locked away.
Oh yeah, definitely. And
Like you learn that you really do miss your friends. You miss being around people. You miss like going to a place and working, and
yeah.
like not
you
necessarily
miss
that,
being
but you know,
you miss
like,
being in a social environment.
Yes, exactly.
Because like you said, we are not meant to just be locked away.
Yeah, and I mean, like I, go to all the shows and all the bars that I can now. It's just kind of like I want to be around people.
Oh yeah, we're like my wife and I are definitely trying to get out like more now since it's so much easier to go around. Because like we missed so many shows when the pandemic.
Well, I mean, like
put us in
we're having to
lockdown.
cut back on the amount of shows that we go to just because my partner is pregnant. But
And also, I mean, cost of living's gone up. Too.
yeah.
And you have a baby to worry about coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And we're like looking at houses, and it's just like, oh yeah, we don't have $500,000 laying around.
exactly. By the way, congratulations on that. That's amazing.
Thank you.
So
Due in August.
well,
Absolutely.
nice.
All right, Nick, you wanna sign us off?
Stay sexy, Atlanta.
Might want to say that again. We couldn't hear that.
Oh, stay sexy, Atlanta.
Show us that dick.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Dumb, Cool, and Weird podcast with Wes and Nick. If you want to check out more of our stuff, go to www.dumbcoolweird.com. You'll find our Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and Patreon link if you want to support us. Also, be sure to check out our merch store. And if you're interested in being on our podcast, you can find a link on our website so you can reach out to us and tell us if you want to talk to us about something that's really weird, dumb, or cool. We'd be glad to hear from you. Hope you will stay tuned for the next weird ass episodes we got. Thank you.